Patel, sports obsessed and inexperienced as he is with this whole leading the world's premier law enforcement agency thing, sees this weekend as a, quote, tremendous opportunity for the FBI agents where they will, quote, learn and train with some of the greatest athletes on earth. I want to bring in former Assistant Special Agent in Charge at the FBI and National Security and Intelligence Analyst Michael Feinberg. John and Loretta here. I actually think physical fitness is super important, and I want law enforcement to be healthy and strong. But I think that now that we're at war with Iran, I would feel even better if they were spending the weekend with the world's preeminent cyber counterterror and Iran experts. It seems like even if you want to save face and say this is such a good idea, we're going to do it later, but current events have me prioritizing something else, that might be a more elegant way to handle this.
It wouldn't be entirely true, though, because it's not a good idea, not remotely and not in any fashion. And I say that as somebody who actually quite likes fighting in hand-to-hand combat. I spent the better part of the decade as an amateur boxer in Chicago competing. But when FBI agents are training to fight, they're doing so with a purpose. They're doing so to effect arrests or to end a fraught situation. And when they are engaged in a fight, their goal is emphatically not to wrestle somebody to the ground and engage in 3-minute rounds of ground fighting. Their goal is to momentarily incapacitate the subject, create space between them so that they can safely draw their weapon and apprehend the individual in the normal means of arrest. They're not in a cage where there is a geographical limit to the fight. They're not trying to score points or entertain an audience. They're trying to get an important job done. And as a result, the FBI has actually developed a really elaborate hand-to-hand combat defensive tactics curriculum that agents have been trained on for decades. And like I said, it is based on safely effectuating an arrest, not proving how tough you are and trying to get somebody to tap out.
Michael Feinberg, this story feels important for reasons that are uncomfortable, right? I mean, it's uncomfortable to denigrate the FBI at a moment we need them so much. You want to protect the people that know that this is ass backwards. I mean, I'm at loss for a technical term for this. But you also, I think on the Trump piece, you start to wonder, like, how much embarrassment can he tolerate at a time when he's taken the country to war? And I wonder what you sense in terms of any pressure coming up from the sort of workforce inside the FBI with the folks that remain.
Well, I would push back on the notion that this administration can be embarrassed. But everybody with whom I speak in the FBI, which is still a very considerable number of people, and within its alumni community, everyone's aghast at this. Like, This is insane. And this is what happens when you have an administration, both at the FBI and with the country as a whole, that never themselves have engaged in the hard work of public service. Kash Patel has no idea what it's like to be in a fist fight. Donald Trump has no idea what it's like to go to war. So they're basically just doing things that they think like the cool guys who do this sort of thing would do. I don't know anybody in the FBI who wanted to be an ultimate fighter. We wanted to protect our communities. And learning how to inflict violence was a necessary part of that. But you did it because it was part of that larger goal. You didn't do it as an end unto itself. And whether it's Pete Hegseth's obnoxious tattoos and tacky pocket square, whether it's Donald Trump talking belligerent even though he never engaged in arms himself, or whether it's Kash Patel demanding that the hostage rescue team give him an equipment cage and locker in their facility. Like, these people are play acting, which would be fine if they were doing it with their own resources on their own time. But they're supposed to be serving the country. And every time they engage in silliness like this, they make it more difficult for the people who actually are serving.
And the problem is that there's no reverence for the people who've done what they haven't done, right? The problem with Kash Patel is, there are many problems with Kash Patel, but chief among them seems to be that instead of sitting back and having reverence for the men and women of the FBI who have, in the years after 9/11, thwarted terror attacks and cyber attacks and protected us from awful, awful things without any credit, without a parade, he's turned the building upside down to shake out anyone that actually did their job. I wonder if you think at a time when every single person worries that an already sort of heightened threat environment is hypercharged by the war in Iran and by the rise in anti-Semitism, if there's any sort of, if there's any outside dynamic that could shake him out of that leadership post. I mean, do you think there's anyone, do you see anyone on the map that could sort of wake them up and say this is no way to run the world? I guess I'm answering my question as it's spilling out.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Look, if you canvassed anyone I ever supervised in my own career, I hope what they would tell you is that when I first came into any management or leadership position, the first thing I did for at least a couple of months was shut up and listen. You don't change things, you don't break things until you know how they work. And what we've seen with the FBI is what we've seen with USAID. It's what we've seen with DOJ. It's what we've seen with DOJ, which is people come in intent on remaking the organization in a way to please the president without even a baseline understanding of what its function is, who it serves, or how it has worked in the past. And, you know, the price of everything is going up. We're enmeshed in a war of our choosing. We have alienated every ally in the world. The economy is not doing well. DOJ is losing indictments at a rate that is historically more than notable. Like, hopefully the average citizen, including those who originally supported this administration, is starting to wake up and see that, you know, to use an old firearms term, they couldn't even hit the side of a barn door.
Michael Feinberg and John Heilman, thank you both for starting us off today.